welcome back to my channel. Today's video is a little bit different. We are not making a card or a tag. We're going to make a slider treat box for Halloween. I'm going to give these to my kids' teachers and to one of my daughter's classmates. So what I'm showing you here are some perfect pearls. Those are a pigment powder that bind with water, and I'm showing you a brush that actually came with one of the sets of perfect pearls I bought, but I don't actually use that today for those perfect pearls. I have a 1/2 inch circle punch. This is from EK Success. That was purchased from Hobby Lobby. I have a stack of black cardstock here. This measures 5.5 by 6.5. That is going to be used to make the actual pouch itself. I have some Hero Hues. This is Unicorn White Pigment ink from Hero Arts. That is the ink I'm going to use to stamp these spiderweb images. This spiderweb stamp set is from somebody. Oh, the Stamps of Life. I have the Webs for Us, which is this one right here. Web for Us, just kidding. And then the other one I'm using is Spooky to Scare. Those are the two stamp sets I'm going to be using today. This is an acrylic block that I purchased from Temu. I have actually been quite impressed with all of the things that I have gotten from there, on the exception of a pair of shoes. But craft-wise, that's been pretty great. It has etched grid lines on one side, and it's just very handy. I've enjoyed it. The Web for Us has a matte coordinating die, so you can cut out like the very fine webbing, or you can cut out like the outline, which is what I'm doing today. This is the Spooky to Scare, and I'm going to be using one of those two sentiments. I'm not sure which, but you can make candy corns. You could cut out a spider to go on it. The Web for Us actually has a die for a spider, but I don't use that today. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to be using my regular size Misty. I also purchased this off of Temu. It was like less than $35, and I know when you purchase it normally it's like 80 something. The only thing that I wish is that the magnet was a little bit stronger and that it came with some like white grid paper, which it does not. That's my only like complaint, I guess you could say. But everything else looks awesome. The grids are there. They're on there straight. The door is the kind of new door where there's a lip instead of having to use like a piece of tape to help you lift the door. This does have like that little lip that you can grab a hold of. So one of the first things I'm going to do is I'm discovering that that magnet is not very strong. I'm going to use that negative space and insert one of these dies, and I'm going to stamp out this web. This web is not, I'm discovering very quickly, is not like symmetrical all the way across. So it is just slightly off. Would it make that big of a difference? Probably not. And by the time I add all the splatters and shimmers and all of this stuff, would anybody have really noticed that the stamping wasn't right? Probably not. And are they getting that close and in depth? Probably not. So, but my OCD was like, no, this needs to be centered. So I fiddled with this for a ridiculous amount of time. So here I've actually brought in one of my Cricut sticky mats that I have cut down, and I actually have my 2-year-old. She's going to help me stamp today. She was so proud of herself. She had to show Daddy all of the things that she did to help Mommy stamp. And she even is pushing down. I give her that. She's lightly rubbing over that. That is a Stampin' Bug from Etsy I purchased. She discovered that it didn't stamp right, so she was like, oh, we get to do it again. And she wants to do it. She doesn't want any help. She's very independent. Sometimes it is not a good thing. But she saw that, oh, I did great this time. So I helped peel the die cut out, and we put another one in. She was just so excited to be able to help. But I did use that Unicorn White Pigment ink to stamp all of that out. Once they were all stamped, I didn't necessarily wait for these to dry. I didn't worry if they smudged a little bit. This is a spider web. She called it a sunshine, which I guess it could look like a sunshine. But I'm going to take those Perfect Pearls. So I have Perfect Pearls in the color Perfect Pearl. Green Patina, Forever Violet, and Pewter. Pewter comes in later, but the first three, Perfect Pearl, Green Patina, and Forever Violet, are the ones that I'm using here, and I'm just applying some splatter. So I just scooped out a little bit with a craft knife, and then I'm going to use my water brushes to thin those out and get them to where they are a more liquidy consistency so that we can actually splatter on there. If you have the Tim Holtz Distress Mica sprays, those would be perfect. In fact, this is like the one time that I was like, man, I really wish I had those, because those would have been perfect, particularly for the next step when we actually work on the pouch that holds the Hershey bar. Those have been absolutely perfect, but I didn't have those, so this is kind of what I had, and this is what I'm using. So she is doing some splatter now. I tried to keep these colors separate. As time went on, they got mixed together because little 2-year-old hands, but she is she is helping mommy do some splatter. So we're just going to go through, and with each of these colors, we're going to add some splatter. I just have a flour sack cloth here just to kind of contain the mess. It didn't really do much. We got splatters absolutely everywhere. It's on the desk, it's on the laptop, it's on the lights, it's everywhere. It got all over us, but that's okay. Wash your hands, you're fine. You do not have to seal these. Like Tim Holtz says, don't lick your artwork, but these have a binder in them that binds with water, so you don't have to go through and actually bind them or put a sealer on them. They're fine. So we just went through and used all three of these colors to add some splatter to each of these little webs, and then we started to work on the next step. So this is what they look like when they have that splatter on there. They're nice and shimmery. Camera doesn't quite do that justice, but it looks really pretty in real life. So the next thing I'm going to do is I have just a scrap piece of paper, and I'm going back to that same unicorn white pigment ink from Hero Arts, and I'm just going to create essentially my own pattern paper. I'm going to stamp this spiderweb out typically about 4 times, just to kind of cover it. Am I worried about the gaps that are there? No, I'm not. I am going to come back with some sprays and kind of add some distressing to it to give it a little more interest. But I do it about 4 times on each piece of paper. If you stamp off the edges of the paper, it looks more continuous, it looks more organic. It looks like you cut a piece of pattern paper apart, and it makes it look a little nicer. Your eye will naturally fill in those gaps. Here's one of the occasions that I just was like, okay, well, we'll just stamp this a little different. So you're just trying to get as filled in as possible. And I continue to do that for all of the pieces that I'm doing here. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add some splatters with some Distress Oxide sprays. So you have to shake those bottles really, really good. You're supposed to shake them like a bell, but I don't have the patience to wait that long, so I just take a paper towel or that same flour sack cloth and cover the nozzle and just shake the ever-living daylights out of it. You want to make sure that all of that pigment is moving, and that you don't see that pigment settled at the bottom, that ball is moving freely, and then you're able to go ahead and spray. So I have Twisted Citron and Villainous Potion, which I thought was very appropriate. I was having some trouble with this Twisted Citron nozzle. It was spraying, but it wouldn't spray well, I guess you could say. It would like misfire in the spraying department, but that's okay. So this is just Paper Studio black cardstock. So this is not like a watercolor paper of any variety. This is just regular plain cardstock. So it doesn't really warp a lot, but I'm not adding a whole bunch of spray either. And you want to be careful of that just because this is not a watercolor paper, so it's not going to take a whole bunch of water, but it took this spray very well. It didn't warp too much, and again, the warping doesn't really matter. It's going to be just fine. So with the amount of spray that I apply here, it's going to be just fine. I wish, this is the stage that I really wish that I had those mica sprays. These would be perfect. Absolutely perfect on here. I did think about taking some of those same perfect pearls, and while the webs were wet, applying some of that perfect pearls over it. That would give it a shimmery look. You could do, there's shimmer sprays out there. You could use those. If you have the Nuvo shimmer powders or the, what are they called? They're new or new-ish. Any of those like shimmer powders, you could use those also. So here's them when they're all sprayed. And that just kind of helps fill in kind of those gaps and makes it look a little more continuous. So here I thought, well, I would like some sparkle on these also. And I'm going to heat emboss in silver. So this is PEWTER perfect pearls, and I'm going to do the same thing. Get it all wet and fluidy, and then I'm going to splatter on some of this perfect pearls onto each of these little what are going to be the Hershey bar sleeves. So I'm just going to do that to all of these, and then we're done with that part. I'm going to show you kind of how that splatter looks. It's very difficult to catch on camera, but it is shiny, it is sparkly. In fact, it looks better when I set it down, so you can see it better off to the left there. And I just do that to every single one of these pieces. Next, I have picked a sentiment from that Spooky to Scare. I'm using the larger Trick or Treat that kind of has the goo coming off of it. And I have treated that with my anti-static powder, and I'm using VERSAMARK ink, and I'm just going to kind of stamp that somewhat in the center as best I can. I'm trying to kind of make sure that it's centered between two of the, for lack of a better word, spokes of the web there, because I am going to punch a hole in that. I have some silver embossing powder from Ranger that I'm just going to sprinkle over the top of it. That adds, again, some shine and some interest, but will also stand out on that cardstock and kind of mimics the shine that we have from all of the other shimmer that we've been adding. So I'm going to repeat that for all of these. These are going to essentially become the gift tags for these little treat pouches. In an assembly line style, I stamp as many as I can. When I run out of space on my desk, I go through and heat set a bunch of them at one time, and I repeat that process, the stamping, the heat setting, until I've done all of them. And this silver really does stand out and looks quite nice on these webs. Once that was all done, I took just a stack of them and I lined up as best I could that Trick or Treat to where they were centered and kind of in between two of those webs. I'm going to stack up about, 5 to 8 of them. And then I'm going to use my We Are Memory Keepers CROP-A-DILE to help me punch a hole through them. Like I said, these are going to become the gift tag for these little treat pouches. So once that's done and everything is dry, I'm going to take those 5.5 by 6.5 inch pieces of paper that we stamped and sprayed and splattered. And on one long side and on one short side, I'm going to add double-sided tape. So this is all the tape you need. There is no scoring involved. There is no cutting involved. There is no trimming necessarily involved. But this is going to help us create our little pouches here. So I have a regular size Hershey bar. I bought these kind of in bulk from a local grocery store. You can find these anywhere, particularly right now where it's like summertime and people are, making s'mores and stuff. You can find these anywhere. I'm going to place this somewhat in the center, and then I'm going to fold over the side that does not have the tape on it. And then I'm going to fold over the side that does have the tape on it. And I'm going to press firmly. It's kind of hot upstairs in my craft room, so these Hershey bars were a little soft. So I'm trying not to warp this Hershey bar, but still get things attached. So I'm trying to make sure that I align the top of this where my fingers are right here, so that that has kind of a nicer finished edge. Then I'm going to take that Hershey bar out, and I'm going to adhere the bottom, push really firmly on the bottom, and then I'm going to adhere that seam. You can always take like a craft knife, or not craft knife, a bone folder or whatnot, and kind of help you seal up that seam in the back. And I'm going to put that Hershey bar back in there, and I kind of tuck that little bottom flap of the Hershey bar so that it doesn't catch, and it gives me a little bit more room to kind of shove that Hershey bar in there. So in order to make this slider mechanism work, I'm going to take that 1/2 inch EK Success circle punch. If you have a die that's a really, really thin rectangle, or I know that there are like ribbon punches out there, you could absolutely use that, but I don't have that. This is what I have. So I'm just centering that, excuse me, in the middle, and I am pushing that all the way down. So it's about maybe a little over 1/2 inch down, and I'm going to punch that out, and then we have a slot for our ribbon to go through. So my ribbon comes from Dollar Tree. I really like their satin ribbon. I think it's really nice, and you get a pretty decent amount for $1.25. So I have cut off about 21 inches of ribbon here. This ribbon is about 1/2 inch wide, and I'm going to thread that through, grab my Hershey bar, and I'm going to stick it through. So I put it front to back. The ribbon I threaded through front to back, and I'm going to stick that in there and then pull that ribbon to where it's kind of even lengthwise front to back, and then go ahead and slide the Hershey bar all the way in. And that gives you this little slider. So when they're done, they can just untie the knot, and they have their Hershey bar. So I'm just tying a knot toward the base of that Hershey bar. This will help keep the Hershey bar inside. And then I'm going to take some Paper Studio twine, black and white baker's twine. That's in the top left corner there that you can see in that sugar shaker. I'm going to take that, and we're going to use that to attach those little spiderweb tags that we made. Normally you would see me heat set this ribbon, but I'm not going to worry about it. If this were for a different holiday, I would probably heat set that, but for Halloween, tattered ratty edges looks really great. So, and if they stay clean and pristine, that's fine too. So I'm not worried about those, but if you want to heat set that, if you are worried about it, just take a lighter and flash over it really quick with the flame, and that'll sear those edges and melt them, and then they won't fray. So I cut out about 8 inches of that baker's twine. This is from Paper Studio, so it's from Hobby Lobby. I purchased that when it's ever like half or 40% off, because I typically don't buy anything from there full price, because I'm cheap chicken like that. I take that and that baker's twine, and I fold it in half, and then I take the looped end and fold it through, or thread it through from the front to the back of that little tag, that hole we made. And then I'm going to tie this to the base of the knot on that green ribbon. And then that will be it. You could make a bow out of it. You could make it to where it's a little bit looser. I didn't feel the need to mess with that. The people are just going to be excited to get a Hershey bar, so I didn't feel the need to get super fancy, and I am not a very good bow tire, and I get kind of annoyed with bows after a while. So I just did a straight knot, and that is it. So thank you so much for spending time with me today. I hope you feel inspired. These are really quick and easy and simple. Here I have a little bit of overhang, so I'm just going to snip that off and give it kind of a cleaner edge. But other than that, these are done, good to go. Gave me a chance to use my Distress Oxide sprays, which I have a bunch of, and I just don't use them very often. So yeah, and it gave my little 2-year-old a chance to craft with mommy. So that was a win-win. So thank you for spending time with me today. I hope you feel inspired, and I hope you send someone you know and care about a little trick or treat today too. Thanks so much. Bye.